Hello everyone, I'm Sahid. Thank you for clicking this video. I am very happy that you're here. Today I will be continuing my chapter series on this book called Moon of the Crusted Snow by waubgeshig. It is a Canadian literature book that I have been reading as a part of a book club at my community college. It's been really fun reading this book, and it's kind of sad that we're slowly coming to an end of this chapter series, but I am truly honored that you have been with me throughout this journey. And if it's your first time ever watching my video, please watch the other or previous chapter videos, as they really give you a bit more idea of this about this book and sort of a summary, and just it helps you understand the book better. So please watch the previous videos before this one. And today we'll be reading chapter 25. The chapter ends at 31, so about 6 more chapters remaining. But yeah, this has been really fun, and I'm just really glad that I have been able to do this with you guys. Before I start chapter 25, I just want to sort of give a short summary about the book. So this book is about a small indigenous community, in particular a small anishinaabe community that's living within the northern region / Great Lakes region of Canada. This region is very strong on hunting. Sorry, not this region, but this indigenous group of individuals are very strong on hunting, fishing, and living, and also giving back. It's sort of their tradition, their custom. It's the way they honor the land that they live in. And it's also a survival instinct, being able to hunt, fish, and all of this helps them be able to provide for their family, to provide for themselves. I also would like to mention that the Anishinaabe indigenous group are among the first nations, which is basically the first group of indigenous communities that have been prevalent in Canada for a long time, and they still remain standing today. It shows just the high sense of resistance that this community has had throughout centuries and in decades, and how they've been able to still preserve their community despite obstacles that they've faced, from moments of when settlers tried to take their lands, and just to moments in which they face obstacles with being able to maintain and preserve their traditions. We learned through this book that many of the traditions were still preserved, and in certain chapters we saw these rituals and sort of traditions being showcased, which I think is so important, because it really does show the resistance that they had, and the importance of their culture and their traditions. And to sort of highlight more about this book, I always mention the circumstance that they're in and sort of the time period that they're in. So first of all, they're in winter right now, but it started around fall, and slowly the cold got worse there, the snow got deeper, the snow got much worse, it got much colder, much harsher throughout, as the months went by. And during this time that they're in, they also happen to be facing a power outage that just truly is affecting their community and forcing them to make just sudden changes in their life. They were used to sort of making use of modern equipments, such as the TV, just having access to high internet, easy radio communication, phone telecommunication. But now all of a sudden, even electricity these are modern things that they had, and all of a sudden it's gone because of this power outage. And they really are struggling to, or they yeah, they are struggling. And throughout this book, we see that they struggle to maintain order. Specifically, community leaders struggle to maintain order because they feel sort of helpless in this position. They don't really have communication with the outside world either, and they're sort of trying to find ways to make sure the community doesn't get to the point to which things escalate, as we come to, you know, or as we read about actually, that it's not only happening in their community, it's happening in nearby communities, communities in the southern parts of the, sort of southern to their area. And community like Gibson's, Everston Mills, we come to realize that these people are trying to flee. We have people who come to this to the res, this small indigenous group. They come to their community looking for help, and outsiders such as Justin Scott, who is a white man who is very unusual to the community, and people have certain suspicions, and things like this are sort of prevalent through the stories, through the book. And it's a time in which human motives, human emotions, our moods, and, their attitudes are just changing due to this negative circumstance, and due to just how whenever you're in a period in which you feel sort of helpless, and you're sort of thinking about the future, you just become panicked, and you become anxious about what's yet to come. And so this continues to the book, but we notice that despite all this, people and leaders in the community are trying to find ways, and I think that's one way to find a solution. I've mentioned in my previous chapters about how I'm curious on how the solution to this issue would be sort of found. And so I think with these remaining chapters, we'll hopefully come to find how this will eventually end. And so I will now start chapter 25, which is to get the book going and to not keep you guys waiting. But I hope that summary sort of helps. Okay. Chapter 25. Darkness seeped into the house as the sun set. Nicole pinched a tiny copper wheel to turn up the wick of the glass lamp and lit it with a black lighter. The corner of the kitchen was revealed as the flame caught. She picked up the stack of coloring books and moved them to a lower shelf, in case they became a fire hazard. The children had colored everything in them, but they still enjoyed looking at them from time to time. Nicole was conscious that sometime soon, even this light source would disappear with their supply of kerosene. Nagons and Mygons sat on the floor in front of Dan. Their grandfather relaxed back into the soft chair. Nicole stepped to the couch and sat down between Evan and Patricia. It was story time. Dan leaned forward and cleared his throat. He looked deep into the children's eyes. Mygon flashed a smile, missing baby teeth in the bottom row. They loved hearing stories, especially from their grandfather. Do you kids know one about Nana Bush and the geese? He asked. The lamplight glimmered in his brown eyes. The children shook their heads. The adults on the other side of the room cradled mugs of hot tea that had been made from boiled snow on the stove in the basement. Even tried to relax after a long day of walking through heavy snow, checking on elders and carrying loads of firewood indoors. The muscles in his back were tense. Well, it was early in the fall a long time ago, Dan continued. Nana Bush was getting really hungry. He knew winter he knew winter was coming and that he had to get ready. He didn't have much food saved up yet. You know how me and your daddy go hunting a lot before the snow comes? They both nodded. Well, Nana Bush was behind. He should have been hunting for weeks, but he was getting lazy. He was too busy swimming and eating the berries that come late in the summer. But then those ran out, and he decided it was finally time to go looking for food. So he walked down to the lake to try and find some geese. He walked for a really long time and didn't see any. Did they already fly south for the winter? He asked himself. If they did, I'm in real trouble. He knew that the snow was still a couple weeks away, but sometimes the ones with wings know the seasons better than we do. For all he knew, they could already be gone. He kept walking up the shoreline, looking all around him and listening. Then all of a sudden he heard something in the bush up from the shore. It sounded like singing and yelling. He couldn't tell what exactly it was, so he walked up the little hill into the bush. Who's making all that noise? He said. He came to a clearing in the bush and he saw the geese. They were singing and dancing around. They looked really happy, like it was a party. So Nana Bush walked up to the one closest to him. Goose, he said, why are you all singing and dancing? We're leaving soon for the winter, Nana Bush, said the tallest goose. We're giving thanks and asking for a safe journey and good health along the way. Nana Bush looked around. He counted 30 geese in that circle in the bush. Can you count to 30? Dan asked his grandchildren. Oh, I can. Mygan raised his hand and rapidly fired off numbers until he reached the mark. Well done, my boy, said Dan. Now do it in your native language. The boy repeated the numbers in anishinaabe moan, which took a little longer. Dan picked the story back up. So the geese were leaving for the winter. Do you know the anishinaabe word for winter? Nagan's hand shot up. Bibon! Ah, yes, my girl. That's right. Good job. He looked above them to see Eva, Nicole, and Patricia smiling on the couch. To conserve precious resources, the families did most things together, rotating the hosting responsibilities. The idea was to save on firewood and food by living more communally. The only unpredictable variable was Cam. Sydney and their son stayed with her parents, but even knew Cam often wasn't there. He would return to the duplexes where Scott rolled. So anyways, the geese were all dancing around and singing. gestures became more animated as the story's action built. They were very plumb because they had to eat a lot for their journey south. They needed a lot of energy to fly that far. Nana Bush started licking his lips. Look at these geese, he thought. They're enough for me to get through the winter, and they're so fat. Nana Bush was a trickster, so he started to think of a plan to trick them. My brothers and sisters, he said, let me join you in your celebration. I want to wish you well on your journey to the south, so I'd like to offer you a dance. That's very kind of you, Nana Bush, said the tallest goose. He was the leader. We would be honored if you joined our celebration. Please feel free to offer us your dance. Okay, said Nana Bush. It goes like this. You have to close your eyes and spin around in a circle. You have to keep your wings by your side. It's like you're imagining yourself in your warm new home for the winter. Dan stood up and demonstrated the move for the children. They giggled as he spun around with his eyes closed and a silly grin on his face. So the geese said okay, and they started to dance like Nana Bush showed them. He looked around, and they all were spinning in circles with their eyes closed. He walked up to the big one closest to him that he'd been talking to. He kept real quiet and slowly moved his hand down to the goose's neck. He mimicked the motion, leaning forward and peering into the kid's eyes. They sat totally still. Then he wrung his neck. He thrust his hands forward in threatening grips and startled them. Then he sneaked over to the next closest one and did the same thing. And the next one, and the next one, and the next one. They were all dancing with their eyes closed and singing so they didn't hear him. At the end of his evil trick, there were 30 geese lying there dead. Now I won't go hungry this winter. Now I won't go hungry this winter, Nana Bush said to himself. Despite their grandfather's jovial tone, Nanagon's and Mygon's eyes slid over to their parents, who continued to sip their tea, unconcerned. So Nana Bush took all the dead geese out of the bush and piled them up by the shoreline. Dan went on. He stacked them neatly. It was a long day and he was really hungry. So he started a fire to cook one of the geese. I'm so hungry and I'm so tired, he said. But I'm happy with my new bounty for the winter. I have all this food to myself. But he was so tired and he knew it would take some time to cook the first fat goose that he just stuck in the fire. So he decided he would take a little nap to make sure he woke up in time before the goose got burnt. He asked his Dayosh, his bum, to wake him up. His bum? Squealed Nanagons. Yes, his bum. Both children kicked back in laughter. Nana Bush turned and looked at his Diyosh, and he said, Okay, Diyosh, you better wake me up. I don't want to burn that goose. I'm just going to have a quick sleep. You make sure it turns out okay. Keep an eye out too. Make sure no one takes all our food. So then Nana Bush went to sleep. He slept for a really long time, longer than he wanted to. Then all of a sudden he woke up. He was startled because the sun was starting to set and his Dios hadn't woken him up. Nanabush looked right at the fire. It had become really big. He saw the goose's long legs sticking out of the fire on the rocks at the edge of the fire pit. He went to grab them to pull out the goose, but the legs were all that was left. The goose was in there for so long that it totally burned up. He looked at the legs in each of his hands and got really mad. Then he remembered the rest of the geese. He turned around quickly and saw the whole pile was gone. Something came and took them while he was asleep. Dios, he yelled. You were supposed to keep an eye out. Now our supper is burnt and our food for the whole winter is gone. Nanabush was so mad that he wanted to punish his Dios for not doing the job he asked it to do. I know, he said. I'm going to put you in the fire as punishment for not following my orders. You know from now on you listen to me, So Nanabush sat down on the edge of the fire pit and put his Dios in the fire. He put his bomb in the fire? Said Mygon. Why would he want to hurt himself? Dan tilted his head sideways and continued. It did start to hurt. It only took a few seconds and Nanabush Dios was totally on fire. Ow! He screamed. He jumped up really fast and started running around in circles. He sprung from his chair and shuffled quickly around the kids' spot on the floor, circling them while holding his butt. High-pitched laughter soared through the room. He was panicking. Dan raised his voice, standing in front of them. His Dios was on fire, and he needed to put it out. But he was too far from the water just to jump in. So he ran and jumped bum first onto the rocks and slid down. He kept sliding through the rocks on his Dios until the fire was out. He kept going until all the burnt skin came off his Dios. He paused and sat back down. So you know all those green things you see on rocks in the summertime. Some are like little plants. Some just look like skin on the rock. The children both nodded. That's from Nanabush's burnt bomb. When he slid down the rocks, it left all that behind. Some people call that green stuff moss and lichen. Even spoke up behind them. Neat, eh? Can you think of any other important lessons in that story? I know, said Maegan, shooting up his hand. What's that? Don't be greedy. Don't be greedy, Nanagons echoed. That's right, Even said, and always be ready for winter. And that is the end of chapter 25. That was actually really nice. I've talked about this in my previous chapter videos, and I slightly mentioned about it in this video. And I'm going to come back to it. And what I've mentioned and I like to come back on is the importance of culture. The importance of making sure the younger generation understands, the deep importance of where they came from, the stories that have been passed down through generations, and the importance of their language. If these things really teach kids and helps kids, and not even only kids, but people who are young and who have so much time to sort of be immersed, excuse me, into what is theirs, and by parents and or caregivers or even grandparents like Dan, sort of telling stories to their grandkids really is a huge gesture and a huge movement towards the idea of making sure that the younger generation knows these things, knows who they are. This, instills a sense of, confidence in their identity. And so it was really beautiful that Dan tells the story to the kids. And, in between the stories, he sort of asks them to, say things in the Anishinaabe language, or in Anishinaabe or also known as Anishinaabe language. And so it was really beautiful. And then when he asks them to translate certain words in the Anishinaabe words, and them doing it was just really beautiful to me, and it really shows how this is something that they do constantly, and these kids are growing on that, and when they get older this will be truly instilled in them, and they will be able to pass that on to the generation that they hopefully birth and bring into this world, or the generation that comes after them. And so yeah, it was really beautiful. I think important that the author included this part of um, the story in the book, because it deeply just brought it together and highlighted what many of his book has talked about in different chapters. So just the importance of preserving culture and how they've done it through generations, and they're still doing it, and it's Vivid and Even's family. And so yeah, and I love the enthusiastic emotions the kids expressed and the questions they asked as they listen to the story. But yes, yeah, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please kindly subscribe, like, and comment, and I hope to see you in the next few chapters. Thank you. Bye.